New York City, America's preeminent metropolis. 8 million people, the most densely populated urban center in the United States. But this enormous city's population and geography make it especially vulnerable to emergencies. If a fire, hurricane, or blackout occurs, are you prepared?
In an emergency, are you prepared to make decisions to help ensure the safety of you and your family? Do you have a plan? Are you ready, New York? New York City is no stranger when it comes to the forces of nature. We've been hit by hurricanes, heat waves, and winter storms. But we're also vulnerable to disasters such as power outages, building collapses, and fires.
From flash floods to tornadoes, weather extremes have been on the rise. As a result, New York's aging water, power, and transportation grids may be disrupted.
New York City, just in its geographical location, is a problem with emergencies and catastrophic events.
And weather extremes often have devastating effects on New York City's infrastructure.
But if a hurricane followed a critical path and created a storm surge, you could have a wall of water 21 feet, much of lower Manhattan, the Bronx, all the airports, it would be underwater.
An emergency can happen at any time, on any day, without warning. It's important that you are prepared.
When that storm hit, the only people that should have been outside, the people that maybe had to get to work.
A 50-foot curl wave ripped out my friend's apartment walls.
People had no access to food, no access to water.
Being prepared for the unexpected requires advanced planning.
Most of us become very complacent. When something happens, people are rushing to buy supplies from the supermarket. You may be out of luck.
Thinking a situation through ahead of time will help you make the right decisions during a disaster.
Emergency preparedness is not rocket science. It's collecting mundane, sometimes very accessible products, but collectively they become a treasure in an emergency.
The first thing to do is make a disaster plan.
Develop and practice this disaster plan with your family.
The best time to think about preparing for an emergency is when there is no emergency.
Have your water, have your battery-operated radio, have your flashlight, have extra batteries.
First aid equipment in your house is not a bad thing to have.
Know what to do, where to go, how to find one another, and how to stay in touch during an emergency.
You write down phone numbers, the school number, work numbers, and out-of-town contact.
In an emergency, the telephones get log-jammed with people calling their loved ones, so a lot of times you can get out of state or out of the area code a lot faster than calling in the area code.
Staying in touch is key.
Texting is a very important communication tool. You can blanket text and get that message out so quickly.
Create an emergency reference card to store all of this information in one place.
That's where you list all the family names, all the cell phones, school numbers, work number, addresses, and out-of-town contact.
If you have special needs or you care for someone with special needs, make sure your plan takes into account diet and medical considerations.
Children, seniors, and people with disabilities are especially vulnerable. Your disaster plan should take everyone's needs into account.
Heat waves. For elderly people, that means preparation. They've got to remain in air-conditioned homes.
For many New Yorkers, pets are a part of the family. Include them in your emergency plans.
If you're like most New Yorkers, in an emergency, you won't want to part with your pets.
In the case of the blackout, those pets didn't have access to getting food and water from the stores just like their owners.
If you have to travel, you won't want to lose your pet. Be sure to harness the animal and attach its identity tags.
During an emergency, it's important to know what's going on. Don't rely on word of mouth.
In a disaster, city officials will issue updates on the situation. Carry a small, battery-operated radio. Knowledge is power, and information could save your life.
Emergencies can happen anywhere, at home or at work. Some emergencies may require an evacuation. Be sure to know all the escape routes.
If a fire rages through your building, every minute counts.
The lobby was filled with thick smoke. The door wasn't even visible. Knowing the layout helped me to get out.
A disaster requires quick thinking and a plan.
People are better off when emergencies happen if they plan and they've actually trained and practiced it.
In an emergency, you should only evacuate under two circumstances: if you are in danger or if you are told to do so by the city.
Sometimes it's better to stay in place rather than go out into a hazardous area.
Don't waste time on non-essentials.
We were standing in like 3 feet of water in my friend's apartment, and we were trying to unplug her stereo. How did we not get electrocuted?
Part of your disaster plan should include meeting points. Always plan on a place where members of your household can reunite.
When I saw the smoke, the first thing that came to my mind was to make sure all my family members got out safely. One of the plans is to have a meeting point that everybody knows about, and when evacuating from a building, to go to that point right away.
The first meeting point should be near your home. You'll also want to have one outside your neighborhood.
If someone is missing, when the first responders do arrive, you know who the person was, where they were last seen, or where the first responders should look for them.
An evacuation is underway and you're fleeing on foot. Your go bag is your survival kit.
If you're evacuating, you'll be out of your home. Your go bag should have all the essentials you may need in a crisis.
Basic necessities: water, food, flashlight, batteries. That's going to get you through the emergency.
Your go bag is also a link to your identity. In it, you'll have your ID, food, first aid kit, and some cash. Time is of the essence, and in the rush to get out, it's easy to forget the essentials.
If there's medical information that you think is important, this is the place to add it.
I have some snacks, some comfort items, photocopies of all of my important documentation.
Place copies of prescriptions in your go bag.
I put my go bag near the door. It may not look pretty, but that's the quickest way if I need to get out to grab it with me.
And since you're likely to be outdoors and on the move, make sure you're dressed appropriately. And if you're traveling with children, you'll need to pack for them as well as yourself.
Ensure your family's comfort and ability to thrive in a difficult situation.
If you're on the road with an infant, you wouldn't want to find yourself without a bottle and a clean diaper.
During an emergency, know what to do and where to go. Where would you go in an emergency?
Wind, snow, flooding, power outages. If such conditions require you to evacuate, your best bet is to go and stay with family or friends.
The shelters are going to be bare minimum, and they're basically public schools with a cot and a pillow. By staying with friends and family, you're lessening the burden on city services.
In some instances, the city may open shelters in public buildings, like schools. Remember to take your go bag.
During the emergency, news media will be notified what evacuation centers are open, where people can go to. From the evacuation centers, they'll go to the shelters.
In some emergencies, city officials may ask you to shelter in place. That means stay where you are.
What do you do if a tornado hits? Sheltering in place is the best way to stay safe when it's too dangerous to go outside.
A tornado is a vicious cyclonic disturbance. They form quickly and they dissipate quickly. The best thing to do is seek shelter away from exterior walls where damage can occur.
Identify a room with few doors and windows, and stay tuned to local media for updates.
We just thought it was going to be a little storm. When I heard my roof flipped, I didn't know it. It was just a big bang. House shook. I said, what the heck was that? Whatever was in its way was just flying. There were some trees down on that end that went with it.
An emergency can occur anytime, day or night. Consider what you might be up against.
People were not prepared in terms of having supplies in their home, not being able to refrigerate their medications. So we had to assist with a lot of distribution of food and water and ice.
If an emergency forces you to stay at home, be sure to have an emergency supply kit.
Include in your emergency supply kit enough food and water for 3 days. Make sure everyone in your household knows what's in the kit and where it's stored.
Most adults need about a gallon of water a day to survive. In an emergency, clean water might be hard to come by.
Every supermarket sells bottled water. For each person in your household, you should store at least 3 gallons of water.
People might underestimate how much water they need. Be well hydrated, especially if there's a power outage. The likelihood is it's summer and that it's very hot.
Are you ready for the unexpected? Let's go over what you and your family can do to prepare.
Make a disaster plan. practice this plan. Know where to meet in case of an emergency. Consider everyone's special needs. Stay informed. Know all the escape routes. Everyone should have a go bag with medical information, copies of prescriptions, water and food, and some cash. Know what to do and where to go. If instructed to do so, shelter in place. Be sure to have an emergency supply kit. These are all parts of your emergency plan, and this plan should be for every place that you spend time. At home, school, work, or in the community. Be prepared.
Once you make a plan, help others do the same. For more information, go to nyc.gov/OEM or call 311. Being prepared means staying safe in an emergency. And staying safe could be as simple as having a plan. Be ready, New York.